Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books I have on my physical TBR. So I have 12 books in total, and you may recognize some of these from my book haul video, but I have not gotten around to reading them because I've been borrowing more books from my local library. So this month specifically, I've been trying to read more books from the library. It's been really helping me not buy so many books. Even though I personally love owning books, I love collecting books, it's been getting a little bit out of hand lately. These are the newest additions to my collection, so get yourself something nice to drink and let's jump in. The first book that I have is James, and this is an Aardvark pick for April. So I've never used Aardvark before this month. I've been using Book of the Month and I've liked them so far, but this month I wanted to try something different, and I am really happy with the quality of the Aardvark books. They feel really well made, and I really love the cover of this book too. It just looks so classy. I think this would look really great on a bookshelf. This is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, but from Jim's perspective, and I haven't actually read Huckleberry Finn, so I'm gonna wait until I've read the original just because I don't want to miss any context. And even though this is a new book, there have been a lot of positive reviews, and this was also a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and I've only read one Pulitzer Prize book, which was All the Light We Cannot See, and I really loved it. The people who have read this book have said that this book is really funny, but it's also very poignant, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. So this next one that we're going to talk about is How to Solve Your Own Murder, and this one is also an Aardvark pick. I thought the premise was really interesting, and I just love the cover. I think it's so beautiful as well. It's about a young woman who essentially finds out from a fortune teller that she is going to be murdered. So while she's still alive, she tries to uncover the mystery of her murder and I guess figure out who did it. So I thought that was a really unique spin on a mystery, and I think there must be some sort of fantasy elements or magical realism as well, and I love magical realism and fantasy, so I think this one is going to be a perfect book to read probably in the fall. I might save this book to read in October, but it's just so pretty I might read it sooner. So the next book that we're going to get into is A Sweet Sting of Salt, and this is actually Rose Sutherland's debut novel, and I want to show you all something that I'm really excited about because this is actually a signed copy from the author, and I have never had a signed copy of anything before, so I'm so happy that I got my hands on this. And I also think the cover of this book is very beautiful. I think if you put the books side by side, all of my Aardvark picks, they all have something in common. So you can see there's like an orange and teal sort of color scheme, and I'm not sure if that was on purpose or not, but they just look so good together, so I'm really happy about that. This book is about a woman who is a midwife, and one day she stumbles upon a woman who is about to give birth who's having some complications, and she tries to help her. After she helps her, she basically endangers her own life. I'm not really sure what the rest of this book is going to be about. I think it has some elements of historical fiction as well as mystery. The next book on my physical TBR is actually a book that I'm going to read for my book club. My friend picked this book this month, and it's The Collected Regrets of Clover, and I think that the cover is so beautiful. I think my friend did such a wonderful job of picking a book this month. So this book is actually about a young woman who is a death doula in New York, I believe, and so the protagonist spends most of her life helping other people transition to the end of their life, but I think that would be kind of heavy. I think the rest of this book is about Clover learning how to find joy and learning how to essentially find meaning outside of being a death doula. I'm really looking forward to reading this one because I think I'm going to annotate this book. I don't annotate every single fiction book that I read, but because of the content in here and because it's a book club pick, I think it'll be a good one to annotate. I might make a video on it. If you want to see a video on annotating this book, let me know in the comments and I can make one. So the next book that we're going to talk about is The Storm We Made, and this was my book of the month pick back in December, and I know it's been a couple of months and I still haven't read it. I really want to read this book because it's a historical fiction and I love historical fiction. The author is a Malaysian author and this is also her debut novel. So this book takes place during World War II in Malaysia during the Japanese occupation, and it's about a mother who becomes a spy for the invading Japanese forces. The rest of this book talks about the repercussions of her actions as a spy and the negative consequences that it has on her family. So the next book we'll talk about is another historical fiction. This is The Women by Kristen Hanna. I've read The Four Winds and I've also read The Great Alone, and both books were 5 stars for me. So I feel like Kristen Hanna is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors, and this is definitely a thick book. I think most of her novels are pretty long. The Great Alone was like 500 pages or something like that. So this is definitely going to be a heavier read. But since I just read The Great Alone last month, I might take a little bit of time before I read this one, just because every time I finish a Kristen Hanna book, I am just so sad. And I love feeling emotional when I read books, and I love reading about resilient people and the challenges that people have to go through. But sometimes it can get just really, really dark and really, really sad. So I might save this for a little bit later on in the year. But essentially, this book is about a young nurse during the Vietnam War, and she enlists to serve in the army. And anytime I've read stories about war and just the devastation that it causes, I feel like the story is just going to be a really heavy, emotional one. So I might actually wait until I can read this with a friend so that I have somebody to talk about this to. This one is going to go back into the TBR pile for a little while. The next book on my TBR is actually a memoir, and this is Hereafter by Amy Lynn. And I've read that this book is very, very beautiful and heart-wrenching. So this memoir is the aftermath of the author losing her husband suddenly and tragically, while also trying to navigate her own health issues. I think I was looking for something like this back in February. I read the last Love Note with my book club, and that was also an exploration of loss and grief, but I didn't like that book. I'm hoping that I'll resonate a lot more with this book. The next book is The House of Eve, and this is also a historical fiction. So this one is set in Philadelphia in the 1950s, and it follows the story of 2 young women. The first one is a teenager, I believe, and she is the first person in her family to be accepted into college. However, she has an affair that threatens to essentially derail all of her plans. And then the other story is about a young woman who goes to Howard University who falls in love with William. Is from an elite and wealthy family. She'll have to navigate that inner circle, and I believe their 2 stories will eventually collide. The rest of the books on my TBR are all from Book of the Month, which I got last month actually. And the first one is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I'm so excited to read this book. I actually started reading it when I was in LA for my friend's wedding, and I thought it would be perfect to read a story about a glamorous movie star while I was in LA, but it was just such a busy weekend, and so I didn't really have time to get into the book. I think I read the first chapter and then I put it down because I'm reading some other books right now, but I'm really excited to get back to reading this book. My friend actually recommended this to me. This book is about a glamorous ex-movie star whose life has been pretty scrutinized by the media because she's been married 7 times. I don't really know why people care how many times you've gotten married. I mean, it's your life, right? And when she finally is ready to tell the story of her life, she chooses a relatively unknown reporter named Monique Grant, and as Monique is interviewing her, they start to uncover some connections that they have. The next book that I have is Kill for Me, Kill for You. I believe that this book is about 2 women who befriend each other, who've had some really terrible things happen to them, and I guess that they get together for revenge on the people who destroyed destroyed their families. I'm feeling like this one is going to be kind of dark, so I might also save this one for October. So the next book that I have is also a mystery, and this is The Silent Patient. I have seen this book everywhere. My coworkers at work were actually reading this book, and my friend also wants to read this book, so I might read this book with her. I read The Fury in February, and I think that book got some mixed reviews, but I really enjoyed that book. I really liked the author's writing style. I remember listening to a podcast that this author was on, and he talked about how he's really interested in examining the psychology behind why people commit crimes and why people essentially do bad things. And this book is about a woman who seemingly had a perfect life, but she killed her husband, and after she killed her husband, she never spoke again. So the book follows her story and her psychotherapist's story, who wants to uncover the truth of what really happened that night. This book is also kind of dark, so I might also save this for October, but maybe I'll read it in the summertime because there's plenty of sunlight and I won't get as scared. The last book on my physical TBR is Circe, and I am so excited to read this book. This was actually in my top 5 books that I want to read this year, and I finally got a copy of it. So this book is about Greek mythology, and when I was younger, I just loved Greek mythology. I was obsessed with studying the gods and the goddesses. This book follows Circe, who is the daughter of 2 very powerful gods, but she doesn't really take after them. She's kind of like an outcast, and so she'll venture out into the world of mortals, and we'll follow her story from there. Those are all of the books that I have on my physical TBR. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books, what you thought about them, and if you have any recommendations for me. And if you'd like more tips on how to read more books, you can watch this video next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you who've subscribed, who've commented, who've liked my videos. I made this channel a couple months ago, and when I first started taking BookTube more seriously, I had like 30 followers. Most of them were my family and my friends, and now we've grown to 240 subscribers, and that feels so unreal to me. The thought of 240 people coming to see me or even just like hanging out with me is mind-blowing. Part of starting this channel was so that I could meet new people and connect with other people who also loved reading books, and it's been such an amazing experience so far. I just want to thank you guys so much for supporting me. It really means the world, and as always, take care of yourself because you deserve it, and I'll see you in my next video.